Hey there, hi there, ho there. It is the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show coming to you once again from Quaker Steak and Lube. After the week off, we get ready for Penn State and Arkansas coming up to kick off New Year's Day Bowl action on Saturday. Yes.
Hope it gets played.
Amen. Man, it has just been crazy. Because you thought we were past, you knew COVID was still out there and realized that, yes, there's going to be scratches here and there as far as players and, coaches. And we've seen that throughout the course of the season. But, man, these last few weeks are just crazy. And I don't even know what to make of any of it. And we have games being canceled, new opponents for some of these games and all of that.
I was trying to think, Ironhead, was there a single regular season game in FBS missed this whole season? I don't think there was.
I don't think missed, no. I don't even, I don't think so.
Like, it's just wild that we went from everything seemed to be running really smoothly and they had it under control to like 4 bowl games in a week.
And listen, I don't even want to get into the debates about what isn't happening and
Sure.
what is and isn't working, but is this stemming from just the Thanksgiving, the fact that people went all over the place with Thanksgiving? I mean, is that what people are attributing it to? Because I don't know what else. I mean, because the vaccine rates are through the roof high, right? I mean, pretty much the only people holding out now are the people that aren't going to get it for whatever reason. And I'm not again, wanting to debate that, but this isn't like just unvaccinated people that is causing teams to have to cancel bowl games. And for all of the NHL schedule has been
disaster.
Penguins in particular, in terms of what I'm following. I mean, it's just been a complete mess here.
Well, so this has made me realize that I had kind of lost the thread of even what teams were doing in terms of keeping track of like testing on a regular basis and all that.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that the protocols were in place based on, what we knew about COVID from the last 24 months. And then now the Omicron seems like it has way more breakthrough cases, but, milder symptoms necessarily. But because you have so many vaccinated players who are still getting tested, I guess, randomly or regularly, and they end up testing positive, those rules were put in place, sometimes over a year ago, that it's just like you get these positives and you're done. And look, like the professional teams are one thing. In the college football world, I kind of get the impression like some of these teams were not heartbroken to just call off and not play in a bowl game for whatever reason. Supposedly, Hawaii is having all kinds of issues with Todd Graham, who I know is incredibly popular in the Pittsburgh area among Pitt alumni. And so there was some speculation that maybe the players on the team were about ready to call it quits as it was. And so when the COVID positives came up, they was just an easy excuse to throw in the towel. But, yeah, it's wild.
And again, I realize this isn't new this year. It's been the last couple of years, but it is the other thing that is taking away. And again, I understand it as far as it goes, although I do have a question about, with as many players as are opting out of the bowl games, including most recently now for Penn State, Jahan Dotson, although Brandon Smith
and McKinney, too, a few hours ago.
Yeah. And so here's my question on that specifically is, and again, I understand it as far as it goes. I think the risk is relatively small, right? And there have been examples, and I get it, and they're the examples you point to. But, I mean, it is not over the 40 previous years of big-time college football, how many, like, top 3-round draft picks got injured to the extent that it affected their draft status? I mean, there's not. I mean, I haven't gone back and done the research, but I mean, it's not.
There's Jalen Smith.
It's not.
And then there's
many.
everyone else who's not Jalen Smith.
Yeah, I just but my other okay. You listen. I'm opting out of the bowl game, which is supposedly right a reward for a good season. Now, right. Penn State kind of 7-5. You lose 5 of your last 7 games, 2-5 in your last 7, correct. And you get rewarded with the Outback Bowl. It does seem on the surface fairly outrageous. And again, I get it. I mean, it's Penn State is a terrific draw, brings the fan base, all of that, and that's why Penn State gets the benefit of the doubt. But it is a little ridiculous at the end of the day that a 7-5 team that stumbled as badly as Penn State did down the stretch gets that type of reward. But if you're Jahan Dotson, and Dotson's the most prominent example for Penn State. But why, if you are willing to risk injury in the last game of the regular season, I mean, what is the difference from Jahan Dotson's standpoint? What is the difference to him whether Penn State finishes 8-4 or 7-5? And again, this game against Arkansas is going to be remembered much more by fans, regardless of what happens, and depending on what happens, maybe even more so. But then any of the final games down the stretch of the regular season, right? I mean, bowl games just stand out more, unless there's something specific that has happened, but nothing that Penn State fans want to remember happened in any of the meaningful games down the stretch.
Question. And like I mean, if you're eliminated from division title contention, once you're out of being able to play in the Big Ten championship game, why
and
play
is
Rutgers?
That where players are going to go next?
I mean, very possible.
The other side of that is since we are becoming more we are getting closer and closer to these kids in college being treated as professionals with both the NIL stuff and the national letters of intent. Could we see, because I don't know why you wouldn't, if you're Penn State, let me back up. There's two things here. One is it's just going to take one player, right, saying, like if Ohio State, God willing, has an awful season next year and for once in their lives doesn't live up to their expectations and goes 7-5, but let's say they get to the point where they are 5-2 and then 5-3, and again, once you get a player, because that's what happened with the bowl games. It's a player, and I don't remember now who was the first, but said, "Hey, I'm opting out." Well, then it became. So I think that could be because again, I mean, really, if I'm Jahan Dotson, why did I play those last couple of games? You're not. I mean, if we're looking at risk reward, right. Because the potential reward was trying to get to a better bowl game, which he doesn't want to play. so I mean, it doesn't make any sense that he wanted to play in those games, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it really doesn't.
It would be an interesting academic exercise to ask if the bowl was better, and where's the dividing line? Is it the Citrus Bowl? Is it a New Year's Six Bowl? I mean, there are kids on Ohio State who have opted out of playing in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were talking about this on our way back here into Happy Valley. We were traveling for the holidays. And I asked the exact same question you did, which is, why would you play in the Michigan State game? You probably had a better chance of getting hurt in a snow game than you are playing as long as the field's not all mucked up like it sometimes is down there. There's that question. And then, we were talking about playing in the Rose Bowl, and I was talking about Goon and Brandon both talk to this day, 25 years later, about what a great life experience it was to play in the Rose Bowl and how, win, lose, or draw, the fact that they could say they went out there to Pasadena and they played on New Year's Day and were part of that great American tradition that very, very few people ever get to say, hey, I put the pads on and I took snaps in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
That was a really special life experience that you see even after everything else they have done in their lives. They're so appreciative of having gotten a chance to play in the Rose Bowl. Again, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is something Goon has said on the show many, many times before. And I try to not render judgment one way or another with what these guys do with their lives. Like, if you don't want to play in the Rose Bowl, like, great, whatever. But I'm not going to also come out and say, like, oh, man, what a smart decision. And you would have been a huge sucker and a dupe if you went out there and you played for free in this meaningless exhibition. Because, man, I have talked to a lot of guys who played in the NFL who talk about the difference between high school and college versus doing football as a job.
Yeah.
Who say, man, it would have been great to just play what I wouldn't give to go out there one more time. And I do wonder, like, are some of these guys later in life, certainly not all of them, but I bet some will look back and say, man, when I think about all of it, I just wish I would have put the blue and white on one more time, or whatever the school colors. I wish I would have played in the Rose Bowl. So who knows? You do what you want, but to me, to just act like everyone who opts out of this last game is making the slam dunk no-brainer decision, and by implication, everyone who doesn't is just some dummy who's been gamed by the system, is, to me, kind of silly and definitely an oversimplification.
Yeah, and I don't I don't know. To me, the bowl games, even, I mean, the Outback Bowl, I mean, this would be one of the top three most significant games of the season anyway for Penn State. Now, when you look back at it, again, at the time, there were other games bigger. But I mean, at the end of the day, once you look back at this season, I mean, this is going to be one of the games that, again, people will point to regardless of the outcome and remember about this season, because it is the season finale.
Two schools with some history who have never played before. I don't know. I think that would be a cool thing to be a part of. And again, I didn't have the athletic talent to start for my high school football team. So I don't know what it is to be making the decision between playing in a bowl game or going to the NFL and preparing for the draft. So I don't want to make it seem like we're passing judgment on these guys. But on the other hand, like, again, I just look at it and I think, man, to your point, how often does it really happen, right? I mean, think about Pat Freiermuth and what happened to his season last year. As you know, he's doing just fine in the pros, and he said before and after the injury, I knew what I was doing. I was confident in my decision. I wouldn't change anything. Yeah,
and so the other part of it I'm wondering is whether or not, again, we start to see players realize, hey, I'm hurting my future potential earnings by playing the last few games of the regular season that at the end of the day is fairly insignificant. Might you see the schools go back, and when you're signing the letter of intent, hey, part of the agreement is, and I don't know at the end of the day, because, listen, Jahan Dotson, and again, I'm not picking on Jahan here. I'm really not. So let's just take player X. What is to stop player X from saying, listen, I have I ended up having the flu, and I'm just not feeling well enough to play these last couple of games. Where I was going is, could the school write, hey, listen, part of the agreement here is, because that scholarship is a form of payment, but take the NIL stuff aside, so that, nobody seems to think it's a big deal that you're missing a game at the end of your career. And okay, again, I could debate that a little bit either way, but whatever. The schools don't seem to have a problem with it, and the fans seem pretty understanding on all of that, so that's fine. But, at some point, so again, let's just player X playing for a high-profile program that has national title aspirations, and so we seemingly all agree now that the bowl game, that's no big deal. Okay, well, now let's say that team that, again, started the season with national title aspirations and hopes, and now we're getting to the last game of the regular season, and this team is 6-5. I mean, it's been a horrible season. Are we in agreement that, well, yeah, okay, listen, he's not going to play the bowl game, and really, what's the point of playing this last game? Okay, well, let's go back the week before when they were 5-5. They needed that win to get to 6-5. I mean, at some point, right? So if you go back and it's like, okay, they get off to a 1-3 start and clearly out of national title contention now. You're 4 games in. Again, this player who has, let's say this is a number 1 draft pick overall type of potential. Well, again, what is the benefit at this point of this guy playing anymore for this team this season? Yeah. And at some point, I don't know where it is, but at some point, I think fans and schools alike are going to say, wait a second, we're paying for your education here, and you're only giving us, again, so there's got to be a line there somewhere. And so my question is, could schools start writing into the, yes, you can sign a play here, we'll cover your education for 4 years, but you must play every game that you're healthy and available for. Again, maybe you say with one exception for the bowl game, or maybe you say, no, you know what? Man, that bowl game is money for the school. I don't know, if I'm a Penn State fan, and I wasn't going to travel this year anyway, but if I'm a fan and I'm traveling down to see the team that I've followed all year, and there's 3 stars, including the biggest reason I think Penn State fans would go to watch this Penn State team in Jahan Dotson, they're not playing. I mean, that's, again, you go to a bowl game for a bunch of reasons, but one of those reasons is to watch the players that you enjoyed watching all year. And in theory, you could have 10 players on a team opt out of the bowl game, at which point, again, as a fan, there is a value lost there for the money that you're paying to travel and then for the ticket itself and all of that. And I don't know, I don't know where and how you would necessarily enforce that. Because, again, at the end of the day, how am I going to force a kid that's telling me he feels bad out onto the field? Yeah. Right? I mean, I might be able to force him to come on the trip with me and all of that. But if the kid says, nope, I'm and again, I don't know how many kids would do that. But, I mean, worst case scenario, I'm a number 1 pick. I am not going to risk myself. I have signed a contract that says I must be out there unless I'm injured or sick. By God, I'm sick. Yeah. Today I'm sick. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's more likely you see that stuff tied to NIL deals.
That's part of it too. Yeah.
On the other hand, and look, this is going way far down the line. But if players end up getting reclassified as employees, then all of that is going to have to be collectively bargained, which I think is going to be a massive disaster.
Wow,
so I don't even want to go that route. I want to speak to your point about, as a fan, how are you thinking about the game? I do think if this continues, there's going to have to be an adjustment about the way we think about the bowl games. And the way
there already is.
I think there is, probably.
Right? Because there was a time where bowl games were as close to what the playoffs are for the NFL as you could get in college football, right? And even now, I mean, it even with the college football playoffs, again, there's 4 teams involved, but for everybody else, I mean, this is at least the perceived pinnacle of the season. And for, again, the last several years now, you're not seeing your favorite players out there for any of these teams. For the most part. There's been a few exceptions, but I mean, generally speaking, if it's a kid that's a top 3, top 3-round draft pick, very few of those are playing these bowl games. And again, that's a big part of the allure, and it affects the odds. I mean, there is a lot of things that impacts, right, in and around the game itself.
It is crazy that this is happening at the same time legal sports betting is exploding, right? And then the question becomes, because look, we're seeing these announcements from players now, and I won't be surprised if we still get 1 or 2 more names that we find out are not going to play.
Agreed.
But listen, James Franklin and the staff and the players, they've known about this in most cases for weeks now. These guys weren't going to play.
Yeah.
So, when do you choose to make the public announcement? Who has that insider information? How's that affecting betting lines and stuff? It makes your head spin and your stomach turn. But I do think you're going to have to start looking at your bowl game, especially if it's not one of the big ones or a playoff game is a different matter. It's really more like a blue-white game that counts. Because I do have to say, for me as a fan, especially because this season took something of a nosedive, the ability to extract much more hope out of the 2021 Nittany Lions is exhausted. So I'm already looking forward to 2022 and beyond. And so to me, at this point, great. I get to see Penn State play a team I've never seen them play before. It's a good matchup. And I'm going to get a look at how
some of the kids,
Jalen Reed back at safety and some of these linebackers and what we've got depth-wise at defensive end, how all those things will come together in a live fire situation. And that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this game not as a capper to 2021. I'm looking at it as a preview for 2022.
Yeah. And I think probably that's what a lot of fans across the board now do with these bowl games, and that's more and more maybe they're the way they're being perceived. The other thing I just was thinking about, and again, I don't know. I mean, I guess I do think these guys are wired for competitive fire. But there is nothing to stop, right? Just to go to your point about the college football playoffs, it's like, well, yeah, that's the exception. But
is it?
But yeah, if you're down, well, one, yeah, is it necessarily, depending on again, if you're a number one draft pick, and that is, your entire future is riding on that. I don't know. Guys, it would be interesting, but
I'll be watching on TV.
But more so, okay. So you're like, hey, listen, now we're going to try to win a national title, but your team falls behind 35-0 at halftime. Well, now what is the benefit? Because you're not coming. Let's say you're down 35-0 to Alabama. Alabama's not blowing a 35-0 lead. Sorry, it's not happening. Or maybe you go out but after a series or two, and now it's 42-0, and you're midway through the third quarter. Again, do you not go to the coach and say, "Listen, just so you know, I'm done. I'm out." Right? I mean, because what is the point at that point of you continuing to risk injury? If you are, again, a projected, really any round draft pick. And I don't think we've had that scenario yet. Notre Dame probably had some players that had to be thinking about it a couple of times in recent years. But
I guess the closest example I can think of off the top of my head, because I've got Penn State on the brain, is it's sort of a reverse scenario where Penn State was beating Washington in the Fiesta Bowl, and after Saquon Barkley had that long touchdown run, they sat him down. So maybe it's a thing where the coach says to the player, "Hey, look, we're going to let your backup go in and play. Thanks for everything you did for the program, but you're done." So maybe it's one of those type of situations. By the way, I should mention this, Ironhead, since we are here at Quaker Steak and Lube, which is a great place to come out and watch all of the bowl games that are actually being played. The University of Houston Cougars just knelt the ball one final time as the clock ran out on an upset win over Auburn. They got to stop letting Auburn play group of 5 teams in the bowl game, because they're not doing the SEC very proud. And you know who looks great right now? Not Penn State, certainly. That win over Auburn
didn't help the resume for the Nets at all. That's for sure.
But who sure does is as Houston defeats Auburn 17-13.
Cincinnati's thinking, hey, we got these guys. Absolutely. Yeah, that game is intriguing. I just feel like Alabama is going to win big, but with my history, and it is interesting just reading all of the lead up to that game, the perspectives that even the fans of the programs are taking. I do not think this is a game that Alabama is overlooking in any way, shape, or form. Cincinnati has their full attention and respect, and rightfully so. I mean, it is, I think, unquestionably a good Cincinnati team. Again, there is a reason those kids are at Cincinnati, and the reason that the Alabama kids are at Alabama, right? And Nick Saban isn't. You might say, well, yeah, it's a veteran team at Cincinnati, and they've really come together. And that's what Alabama does, is come together. I mean, that's what Nick Saban does.
Did you buy into the Georgia defense? I did.
I did, big time.
Now, you know what? In retrospect, I will say it may have been built a little bit on quicksand, because at the beginning of the year, we thought Clemson was Clemson again.
True.
And one of your first impressions of Georgia was that nationally televised game where they played Clemson and totally shut them down defensively. And you thought, oh, my God, this defense is unstoppable. And, now, look, we're seeing some of these SEC teams are maybe not quite what they were made out to be. But the way Alabama came into that game with a game plan and just absolutely embarrassed that Georgia D, I would love to buy into the Cinderella story as much as anyone else with Cincinnati. It is just tough for me to see that team hanging with Bama for 4 quarters. And I do have to admit, I probably have a little bit softer spot in my heart for the Crimson Tide than I normally do, because I'm rooting for Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
But it's not that. Look, I mean, that is the best coach team with the most talent in the country. Yeah. There's no shame in losing to them, which is what I think is going to happen with Cincy.
I think so too. I'm hoping I'm wrong, just because I'd love to see the apple cart get upset. But and I will say that the Michigan-Georgia game, to me, is just a fascinating matchup. That in particular, the Michigan offense against that Georgia defense is just really intriguing, and
that's going to look like an SEC game from the 80s.
Yes,
right?
Yes, or a Big Ten game from the 70s. So, it's I am really intrigued to watch that one and kind of see how everything unfolds. As far as the Penn State Arkansas game, Chris, both these teams are going to be missing some guys that were stars throughout the course of their seasons for the respective teams. And again, that's what makes these bowl games, I think, a little more tricky these days to try to figure out what's going to happen, because you're going to be seeing some guys that you have not seen much of, at least in the roles that you're going to see them in, being counted on in some key spots. And, to try to project exactly how those guys are going to respond is pretty much impossible. But I do think Arkansas's quarterback worries me, just the size and the ability that he has, and this defense, without Brandon Smith, I just think there's going to be some holes that are going to be exposed in that Penn State defense. There are holes that were exposed all throughout the second half of the season, but I think Arkansas's offense is well designed to be able to exploit those weaknesses within the Penn State defense, and the matchup. I just don't think is a favorable one on paper, at least for Penn State, with what Penn State has missing and with what Arkansas is bringing to the table for this one. That matchup in particular worries me. That Arkansas offense and quarterback against Penn State's at times struggling defensive front seven.
Yeah, if you think about the times Penn State has gotten gashed on the ground over the season in wins and losses, probably the Auburn game sticks out in my mind as a game in which the Tigers still had their way with the defense on the ground, at least between the 25s, and then the Illinois game, unfortunately, as an example of a loss. You could get yards on the ground against Penn State's defense, but what they did so well was they bent, but they didn't break, to use the old cliche. But now we are losing an impact playmaker at every level of the defense. Yeah. You're losing the pressure and the containment you got from A.K. Buchetti at the end spot. Yeah. You've left a ton of tackles on the board with Ellis Brooks coming out. I am not the world's biggest Brandon Smith fan. I'm going to be frank, but he covered a lot of ground, if nothing else.
Yeah, I am really curious to see how Brandon Smith fares in the NFL. I think he's going to go fairly high,
so
like a third or fourth round
or higher
pick. Yeah, I mean, because he's going to be a phenom, right? Yeah. And he is, but football is a physical sport at the NFL level. And I know that it's getting more specialized. And listen, I do think Brandon can be a very effective pass coverage type of guy.
Sure.
At that linebacker spot. So, I mean, I think it's not that I don't think there's a spot for him in the NFL, but I don't think he's a guy that is going to fare well being out there down in and down out at the NFL level.
Well, look, they're going to love his ability to drop back and cover tight ends. They're going to hate his lack of ability to consistently tackle in space.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is I don't know. To me, he's going to be a situational defender. Like if you have a team in third and long, yep, let's get Brandon out there.
Sure.
But I don't know that on every play downs that he's a linebacker that's going to fare well in the NFL. Again, we'll see. I mean, I'm not rooting against him by any stretch. I wonder how his game translates to the NFL.
Yeah.
His athleticism is unquestioned. And again, he'll be able to showcase that and will showcase it, I have no doubt, at the combines. And I think that will be impressive. But I just wonder when these teams put on the tapes and you look, again, he just was not the physical, let's blast the running back type of linebacker that you typically need to have success in the NFL. And again, I think there's a role for him in the NFL. I'm just not sure it's as a full-time starter, a linebacker. And if you're not a full-time starter, you don't want to be spending a first 3-round draft pick on a guy that's a situational player, generally speaking.
No, and you're going to have to make your bones on special teams, which is, again, where discipline and space and the ability to wrap up and bring a player to the ground is so important.
Yeah.
And those are places where he was frustratingly inconsistent at Penn State, we shall say.
Take a break here. When we come back, do want to talk a little bit about Russ Rose and his leaving Penn State. We'll touch on a little bit of Penn State wrestling and the prospects for the beloved Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles, as well as we continue with the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show after this.
Lion Country Kia is offering exceptional deals on your new Kia during Kia's Command the Season event.
We have a nice selection on the 2021 Kia Sportage with various options and prices as low as $26,800, saving you $3,000. Or if you demand big power and towing capacity, slip into one of the 2021 Kia Sorentos available on our lot, starting at $32,680.
Discover why Kia drivers throughout the area come to Lion Country Kia or visit online at lioncountrykia.com.
Quaker Steak and Lube is throwing open the garage doors and setting up the umbrellas. It's patio season. Come enjoy great food, drinks, and fun in the sun. There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube, but we're really amping up our event calendars for our favorite time of year. Visit thelube.com to find out what's happening at your local lube this season. Lunch, happy hour, dinner, or late night, indoors or outside, at Quaker Steak and Lube, you'll always find big flavors, friendly faces, and lots of fun.
Hi, Johnny Broom here. If you're in the market for a new Hyundai or a pre-owned car, truck, van, or SUV, nobody beats a Blaze Alexander deal. But don't take my word for it.
Hey, Goon says tell him Johnny sent you.
Hey, tell him Johnny sent ya.
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Wait, tell him Juan or tell him Johnny sent you?
Tell him Johnny sent you.
Here at Bill Pickles Tap Room, we say,
tell him Johnny sent you.
And remember,
and we welcome you back into the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here at Quaker Steak and Lube. Chris Bucanani filling in for the beloved Goon. Today, Goon should be joining us remotely for Thursday's show as we get ready for Penn State and Arkansas on New Year's Day in the Outback Bowl to kick off the still very fun traditional habit of watching college football all day long on New Year's Day. And looking forward to New Year's Eve and the football playoffs this year.
Super intriguing.
Both the games for very different reasons are at least at the start going to have my full attention. Hopefully they're both good games. I mean, as a fan, I hope they're both competitive and keep you interested right to the very end. A couple things. First of all, kudos to Russ Rose on just, one of the all-time great coaching careers at the collegiate level in any sport. Certainly a legend at Penn State and really a legend in women's volleyball at the end of the day. 7 national titles and, the legacy that Russ leaves is we talk about Joe Paterno and how what he did is likely to never be matched in terms of one guy at one school for that long. I think much the same could be said for Russ Rose and his ability to adapt to, there are not many sports that had as significant a change as women's volleyball did when we went from the match scoring to the volley scoring for TV purposes. And it was a move that Russ did not like, was not an advocate for, but once it was done, so listen, this is how we've got to move forward and coach this style, and very quickly adapted and, put together a dynasty for a period of time there at Penn State. And I think, when you look back at the women who've come through his program and what they've gone on to do, what they've done here in terms of developing both, as people and as athletes, that alone is impressive. But when you look at what those women have gone on and done with their lives, I do think it speaks volumes. And, Russ was one of those guys, and I think Russ was and is who he is. And, again, he would adapt in terms of, all right, this is how we need to coach. This is what we need to recruit. He'd make those adjustments. But in terms of expectations, demands, and the way he interacted every day, that never changed from day one, and I don't think ever will. And he is just rightfully a legendary figure at Penn State. And, again, I think his accomplishments will be unmatched at Penn State in terms of what he did with that women's volleyball program for the period of time that he did it.
Yeah, or anywhere.
Well, really. Yeah, anywhere, really.
I mean, so yeah, everything you just said, I do got to call out in particular. I'm blanking on which season it was. It's a good problem to have when you have so many national championship seasons that you get them confused.
Yes.
But the 1 year, which year was it? Was it the 2009 team that barely lost? They barely lost a set all year. I think
yes.
I
don't know the year, but yeah,
one in the postseason at Nebraska, and that was it until the championship round.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. When you think about how fortunate we have been at Penn State in the longevity and quality of the coaching careers we have had come through this place, and you are in the midst of being front row and center for maybe the next one, Ironhead.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It is amazing to me that we had at the same time at Penn State Russ and Joe, and then I could name you half a dozen other coaches. I think about like Char Moret with the field hockey team, and you could go on. And I don't even want to start naming names because I know I'll forget somebody who deserves to be mentioned. The 70s, 80s, 90s, the run of incredible coaching talent collected together in this one place, and everybody just stayed.
Yeah.
Plenty of opportunities to move around,
Yeah.
and nobody left. I mean, just amazing. They started here, they finished here, having rewritten their profession's record books.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And again, Russ was one of those guys who just I think he was good for Penn State because he did have a terrific ability, very dry sense of humor, but he had a terrific ability to, I think, keep everybody in line, but at the same time knew when to let the foot off the gas in terms of, how hard you're pushing individuals or talents. But the long list of players that he worked with and that you saw develop and ultimately thrive, and some of them it really was a process, and there were some tough times along the way. I think Micah Hancock and Bonnie Bremner are a couple that just stand out to me from the years that I've followed the team. That, man, you look at what they left here with in terms of both volleyball acumen and just the personality and leadership skills that they developed under Russ's tutelage. I just think it's pretty special stuff. And again, it'll be interesting to see a couple of names that are out there who replaces Russ as the next coach. But it is just a career that has set the standard, and I think it'll be the standard for a very, very long time to come. And again, his personality was just, for many of us, wonderful. And again, he was a guy that just kind of understood real life and understood the difference between real life and athletics, and when they intertwine and when they actually, in fact, are separate. And I think that was a great ability.
Never one to have much of a filter, but speaking with the media hat on, Ironhead, I am looking forward to entering into this new era in which the shackles are even more off than they ever have been, right? I think we could have some fun interviews in our future.
And he's, again, just had a style that was very much his and his alone. And again, he'll be sorely missed by many, many, and including yours truly, for what he brought to the table for Penn State athletics as a whole. Just real quickly, because I know folks when I'm on like to just get the latest on the wrestling team. First of all, it does look like we will have a Southern Scuffle. I know they canceled Midlands and there was some speculation, but it's looking, at least at the moment, that there will be a Southern Scuffle. I'm not exactly sure. I have not been able to check in just yet. I think Penn State will have 6 to 8 kids down there. And probably at least 4 or 5 with the Penn State singlet on. There will probably be 2 or 3 at least that are going down unattached to keep the possibility of a red shirt available for those individuals. But I think there's going to be some great competition down there, and we'll see how some things shake out, if they shake out, for Penn State at a couple of weight classes. But as far as Penn State's performance down in Niceville, Florida, it was really interesting because we came back Monday night after the win over Cornell, and just some questions about, because Arizona State is a really dangerous team, and how will this team respond? And, on paper it was kind of a 5-5 situation, and you figured bonus points might be the difference, and worried about giving up big bonus points at a couple of weights. Weren't sure if Penn State could get bonus points, knowing that they would need it at a couple of others. And then Penn State goes out Tuesday night and puts together one of the more complete team efforts I can remember in the last couple of years. It just I really thought all 10 guys went out and wrestled their hearts out for 7 minutes, and where Penn State was clearly outclassed in terms of athletic or wrestling ability, they still battled and kept it relatively close. And obviously Bo Bartlett's big win at 149 kind of turned the whole dual meet in terms of you could just see Arizona State from that point pressing, and Penn State was just where Cale Sanderson likes it, which is just going out there wrestling and having fun, and they really did. And I do think that win, coming on the heels of kind of grinding one out against Cornell, and it's not that I don't think this team was close or galvanized ahead of time, but you could just feel it on the way back home. There's just a different feeling when you go through an experience like that, and there were a couple of things I don't necessarily want to get into in public, but there were a couple of things behind the scenes that I will say I think served as a little extra motivation for Penn State in that Arizona State duel. So and I think that also is going to help and benefit this team long term in terms of its ability. And, I don't think Cale will mind me talking about this conversation we have, but and it's not terribly secretive stuff here. But when you go back and you look at, I think I shared on here. Let me go back. I'm mixing too many thoughts together. Jason Nolf, a couple of months ago was asked by NCAA.com to name his 3 favorite memories. I think I talked about this here before, but and he's his 3 favorite college memories of wrestling at Penn State. And he named Vincenzo Joseph pinning Isaiah Martinez. He named Bo Nickel pinning Miles Martin. And he named Anthony Cassar winning the national title. And the person with NCAA.com was like, well, no, but I meant from your career. He's like, well, yeah, those were all in my career. Like, he genuinely didn't understand why the writer was confused. It's like, no, that was my career. And, I was talking to Cale about that, and Cale said, the one thing that I loved the most about going back and watching some of those matches is you see in the background the families of the wrestlers. And like when Vincenzo Joseph pins Isaiah Martinez, David Taylor's father is jumping up in the air as though David Taylor just won the national title. And Cale said that's when you know that what you wanted in terms of that team concept and these guys buying in, because it's not just the kids, and you need that, and you have that too. I mean, you go back and you watch that Vincenzo Joseph tape, and I mean, all those kids are just watching it, and they're all going nuts. All of the starters, and again, Jason Nolf is genuine. The things that he loved the most, it wasn't his wins; it was his teammates, and that's in a sport that requires as much personal discipline, and that is to a large degree an individual sport. I mean, that is an uncommon thing to have. And again, it wasn't just the wrestlers, it was their families that were completely invested. And I think you're seeing that develop again with this team this season. And we'll see. There's obviously a lot of things that need to play out, and I think obviously Iowa's got a very good team, but they were in a dogfight and then some with that North Carolina State squad. And I think Michigan is still a team to really keep an eye on here too once Soriano joins them, because top to bottom, that is going to be a very good lineup as well.
For God's sakes.
So I do think this is going to be a fun college wrestling season, and I do think this Penn State team is going to be right there in the mix. But I think the Nationals could be a little more fun than what people were even envisioning at the start of the season. I think people thought it was going to be a pretty fun national tournament to begin with. But I think there's a lot of both involving Penn State and not. A lot of just intriguing matchups coming down the road here in college wrestling. That's going to make it a whole lot of fun.
So I'm real quick. I'm just curious. Generally, not just Penn State. What was the fan attendance like down there?
It was not good.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things. I don't know. I have advocated for a while. I think I've written a couple of columns on it over the last few years. I think the idea here was not bad. I think the execution wasn't what it needed to be, and I think there are some things that they can do to create a bigger atmosphere. One of the things, it was too fluid of a tournament. There were teams in and out. I mean, Penn State wasn't originally going to go, and then they called Cale back when it looked like Iowa wasn't going to go and asked if he could help out, and they said yes. To me, if you're going to do something like this, and there's a good number of coaches, Cale and Tom Brands included, that do not want the national team duels, and we can argue about whether or not you'd like to see that concept or not. But I'm just telling you, those coaches aren't going to go for it, and it's not just the two of them. I mean, there's a number of coaches, so that is not going to happen. What Cale wanted to see, and what this was to a large degree, is to have a big dual event early in the season. And I think having it in Florida is not a bad thing. My thinking would be to have it either in Florida, Georgia, or Texas, or even rotate between those three states. And I mention those states because those are three states that have good high school wrestling. Florida and Texas have really good high school wrestling across the state, and neither of those have Division I college wrestling programs. Mm-hmm. What I think you need to do, and it's a multi-faceted concept and involves a lot of preparation, and you've got to get teams committing to it again basically a year in advance. I mean, to me, you've got to be setting up this January. Okay, these are the dates, matchups, and times for December. I mean, you need to plan it out, that type of advance notice, and then again, this is just me and what I would do if I was in charge of putting something like this together. So let's just say we're going to go back to Florida, but again, you set it, you get commitments from 12 teams. Again, the format itself, I'm okay with. So you have 3 duels over a couple of days. If you want to tweak that one way or another, make it a one-day event, whatever. But then go to the Florida High School Wrestling Association and promote the heck out of it. Say, listen, we'll give half price, get it to a bigger venue. That venue held 2,000, and I don't know that there were 800 in there at any one point. And again, you had Penn State and Iowa. I mean, that alone, right? I mean, those two teams at Penn State or at Iowa are drawing 16,000. So I think part of it is you plan it out in advance, and you sell it to fans. Hey, this is a kickoff event for the season. Promote it. And listen, you're not going to get 16,000 to come down from Penn State or Iowa, but if you get 1,000 from each, right? Now you've got the 2,000 that you weren't able to fill down there. You go to the high schools, and again, if you plan it out in advance, that type of advance, you can tell teams, hey, try to not schedule dual meets. And I realize not all the teams are, and there's other tournaments going on, but you have a chance to bring your team, your kids, and see the very best that college wrestling has to offer. And to me, you ought to be able to get at least 1,000 high school and junior high school kids and coaches into the venue. And then the other thing that I would do is start to target, and again, I'm making up, but let's say, you think Florida State is a school that could someday add wrestling. Get the AD, lobby the heck out of the AD. Come over to this event. We'll give you free tickets. We'll give some of your administrators. We just want to show you what wrestling has to offer. Let you kick around with some of the leaders of the sport. Let the coaches talk to you about what they think that the sport offers, and really use it as a vehicle. And I would even, because of the interest that is there with MMA right now, I think you could even do like just have 3 featured matchups. I have, Oklahoma State and Penn State and Iowa and Arizona State and North Carolina State and Virginia Tech. I'm just making up the matchups, and you do 3 duels on Friday night, and then maybe you have, an open autograph session or whatever that Saturday, and then have an MMA event featuring a couple of former college wrestlers that Saturday night, and go to like an Orlando or a Dallas or an Atlanta. And again, get it in a big arena and make sure you promote the heck out of it and get the place, if not sold out, close to it. And I think you could do it. Again, it would involve a lot. And again, this was just the first attempt at this. So,
sure.
But yeah, it was disappointing to see how few fans were there given the caliber of wrestling that we were watching. And so that's just my 2 cents for how we would do that. Real quickly, the Steelers, I'm not surprised. Kansas City is just, they are firing on all cylinders right now. I do think the Steelers could still stumble their way into the playoffs. I think these last 2 games are going to be really, really interesting. I think the Steelers will beat the Browns on Monday night because that's just what the Steelers do in prime time. And then, who knows what this Ravens team, that's a completely depleted Ravens team at the moment. Now, couple of weeks, maybe that's not looking so depleted, and we'll see what happens. But the Steelers could end up stumbling their way into the playoffs, which I'd like to see on one hand. On the other hand, again, if they match up, when they match up with either like a Patriots or a Chiefs, they are not going to be able to advance far in the playoffs this year with this team. But still rooting for it. Still like to see, the non-losing record for Mike Tomlin stay intact. So still hopeful for the last couple of weeks. But I think you see there's for sure a gap there between the Steelers and what the true Super Bowl contending teams in the AFC have to offer. The Eagles, I know some bad news with Miles Sanders here, but man, that Eagles team, I do think much the same thing, I guess. I don't see that Eagles team going far in the playoffs, but I do think it's a team that can get into the playoffs here. Mm-hmm. And when you're kind of in the building process right now, it's kind of different scenarios right now for the Steelers and Eagles and what they're looking for and looking at. But I think for the Eagles, getting that opportunity to be in the playoffs would be very beneficial as you start to look toward next season as well.
Yeah, it's a good point you make about the rosters being in 2 different spots. Like the Steelers really do have a little bit of that why not us, there's no tomorrow vibe. Yeah. I think mostly just because of the quarterback, though. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to bring most of that defense back next year. They've got a lot of nice young pieces on offense. It's really more about Roethlisberger and whether or not this is going to be his final year or not, which, by the way, I'm not convinced at all that it is. I do think they're going to win their last 2 games. I have to look a little bit more closely to see how many other scenarios need to play out because of the way things went this past weekend.
Yeah.
I think it got a little bit more complicated for them.
It did.
Right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a jumbled mess right now in the AFC, especially in that with the teams that are battling for those last couple of spots.
Yeah. The Eagles are they're now in a pretty good spot, not totally solidified, but they are trending in a good direction to get that. Both Pennsylvania teams would benefit from the additional wild card being added this year. And again, I think I've said it on here before. It's a very young team, and I think that whatever you give up in draft position is worth it to give your players the experience of playing win or go home. Late season, regular season games.
I do too.
And then just getting into the postseason, even if you're 1 and out, which you're going to be playing the 2 seed. So whoever ends up finishing in that spot, you're going to play a really good team.
Yeah.
And they're a team that is built well enough to give a team a tough time in the playoffs because they can run the ball well, and then their defense has played relatively well. I don't see them going deep, probably not even winning a game, but yeah, to have the experience this early in Nick Sirianni's career and with this many young guys on the roster, I think it would be well worth losing a couple slots in the first round of the draft.
Yeah, and just real quickly on the NFL, it is what has happened with the Miami Dolphins, not one of the most unbelievable things that you've seen. To have a 7-game winning streak and a 7-game losing streak in the same season is, I mean, there's a reason it hasn't been done before, because it's almost impossible. I mean, for a long time, there were only 14 games in the NFL season, so you would have had to have just those 2 streaks. But, I mean, it really is amazing that you can have in the same season 7-game winning streaks and losing streaks. It's just crazy.
So here are,
and the defensive turnaround is that's almost inexplicable to me.
I like Mike Flores a lot as a coach, so I am glad to see him getting that thing turned around. As an Eagles fan, I am not super thrilled that the Dolphins are talking about lowering draft position or lowering that first round pick we're going to get. But I was happy to see them beat the Saints because it helped Philly in the wild card chase. But I mean, I think it's they looked like, I thought on paper a 9-8, 8-9 type of team coming in.
Yep.
And so it's not shocking to me that they're playing this way, but I do just want to give you the list of quarterbacks that they have faced in their 7-game winning streak.
There's no question that's part of the equation, but that's always part of the equation.
Yeah, for sure. So Tyrod Taylor, Lamar Jackson, okay, then Joe Flacco, Cam Newton, Mike Glennon, Zach Wilson, and Ian Book. I mean, it's not a murderer's row, man. Like, if you're a Dolphins fan and you're flying high off the 7-game win streak, like, maybe I pump the brakes a little bit. But, hey, again, that's a team that would just be thrilled to make a postseason appearance.
Yeah, I don't think Ian Mania is going to take over New Orleans anytime real soon.
Notre Dame quarterbacks have now lost 24 straight starts in the NFL.
That is
amazing.
Yeah, and wonderful. That's a good note to end on. Makes me feel good. We will be back on Thursday, talk more about the Penn State-Arkansas matchup, and also delve a little bit more into those semifinal matchups as well with Alabama and Cincinnati and Michigan and Georgia. I do think, again, it'll be a lot of fun watching those games on New Year's Eve, and and this will be an intriguing NFL weekend, too. We'll talk about some of the matchups there and what we're looking forward to, and where our rooting interests will lie for Sunday and Monday as well. So we will talk to you again Thursday. Until then, be good and be safe.